he knows what I'm talking about. And any other honor member. Those of you who use cookers may not know the Orthodox fireplace, that actually there are 3 stones upon which the pot rests. But if you don't know so much about that, you can consult the Honorable Fono Pondo, Member of Parliament for us, the elder, is representing Eastern Uganda. He knows these things more than anybody else. So, each stone represents an arm of government. And you see, if you are cooking on that traditional stove, and one stone is not as the others, then that stove can't be stable. And that is an analogy which the Chief Justice Emeritus, Justice Odoki, gave to explain separation of powers. Without one, then you have a problem with that stove. If one weakens, then you have a problem with that stove or fireplace. If one is bigger than the other, then you also have a problem. So the legislature, the executive, and the executive must have, first of all, you all have equal power obligations according to the Constitution, but different obligations. Let us look at the conceptual and constitutional foundation of this doctrine of separation of powers. You know, for those of you who are scholars, in the 4th century before Jesus Christ, Aristotle wrote in his treatise of the Politics that he advocates against power concentration to avoid tyranny. He therefore proposes 3 branches. 1, that makes the law, and that is you. 2, 1 that executes the law. Where is cabinet seated? This side, and that's you. And 3, that which adjudicates disputes about the law. Once you have got disputes, conflicts, then there is another organ where you run to resolve that dispute. That's what we call the judiciary. However, Montesquieu in 1748 urged in his book, The Spirit of the Laws, that liberty is best preserved when legislative, executive, and the judicial powers are not concentrated in one body. To those of you who have studied history, powers used to be concentrated in one institution, and that was the monarch. The monarch had executive powers, the monarch would legislate, the monarch would be the judiciary. So until scholars, modern scholars, and the development of democracy reach an extent to say we cannot afford to have all these powers concentrated in one institution. That is the development of the doctrine of separation of powers and the basis of modern democracy, that you have specialized institutions of the state, each performing a different role. Next, let us look at the Uganda constitutional pillars. The 1995 Constitution also reflects this modern approach to separation of powers by assigning distinct constitutional responsibility to each arm of government. And I promise you I don't want to go into legalese, article this, blah, blah, this and this. You'll get some time later to read the Constitution, and really I would advise you, especially colleagues who are coming, honor members who are coming to Parliament for the first time. Laws are boring. They're not very interesting to read. But have time and read them. And don't think you read, for example, the Constitution like a novel. They don't read it that way. Read 2, 3 articles and abandon the book, but understand them. You can read another 3 articles 4 weeks later and so on. Don't try to read it like a novel. It is not interesting at all. And the issues are not related. Just pick one article of the Constitution, read, try to understand it, especially those who are not lawyers. Because you need to have a general idea on what the Constitution provides. And that also goes to the rules of procedure. There is no book as boring as your rules of procedure. There is nothing interesting about it, but you have to go to the college and read them. But also don't read from page to page. It doesn't make sense. You'll get confused by the time you go to the 5th page, you've forgotten the other one. Just take your time, pick one aspect of it, read, understand. Then sometime you continue reading it, and Parliament is a place to learn. So continue reading them, you'll get them. There is no miracle about them. Don't imagine there is a miracle about reading and understanding the Constitution. You could even understand it better than even those who went to law school. So just take your time. If you don't understand anything, ask. There is nothing wrong with asking. So when you look at our Constitution, the 1995, you look at Article 79, because that is the one that creates you, Parliament. I want to repeat this. All members of Parliament should be well versed with Article 79. Please, I beg you, please be well versed with Article 79, because that is where you drive your mandate. If you're a member of Parliament and you don't know your constitutional mandate, you don't have problems. But you can choose. There's types of Parliament. Not you, but in the previous parliaments, you have only one type. The previous parliaments, there is a type who's about barriers. You can concentrate there and then you could be re-elected. Then there's one who wants to make a national contribution. And if you are that sort of person, please go to Article 79, understand it, appreciate it. Then it eventually defines what you are going to say. So look at Article 79, it defines the obligations of Parliament. It tells you what you are supposed to do. It tells you about your mandate and your obligations. Look at Article 79. This one is about the executive authority. To the members of Parliament and to honorable ministers, the executive authority is vested in one office, in one person, the president. You all exercise your duties as and when and at the pleasure of the president. All that authority of the executive rests in the office of the president and the duly elected president of the country. Please try to read those, then you'll understand. When I address you on the separation and working together, you need to have this background. So, executive authority rests in the president, and all these ministers, and indeed the entire executive, they do everything for and on behalf of the chief executive of the country, His Excellency, the President. Article 126 to 128, now that goes to the judiciary. And let me tell you, colleagues, honorable members, sorry about colleagues, honorable members. Even courts, sometimes they make a mistake. They go and make a decision which enact laws. They veer into your space. But they don't want anybody to veer in their space. This is, I'm sure you have heard of the decision on the UPDF Amendment Act. When they thought somebody was veering on their space, they guard it jealously. So each institution should guard its space, and quite jealously. But we should also have institutional independence where you don't interfere and yet you must work together. So no single arm derives its power from another. The judiciary does not give you powers. No. The executive does not give you powers. No. You don't give the judiciary powers. No. it is the Constitution that gave all of the arms of government powers. Next slide, please. This is the functional division of labor. The legislature does legislation and oversight, making laws and scrutinizing government actions. And I think the leader of opposition was very emphatic on this when he was making his comments. Oversight. Your role, basic role, you have other roles which are spelled out in the Constitution, which I'll tell you. But your role is to make laws for the good. You know, you've got a distinguished clerk, a lawyer, senior lawyer, of course. You have got the Speaker of Parliament, a very senior lawyer. Never mind what he said. I wanted to make some comment when he's here, but he has gone away. I've been very glad if I were part of his house. Why? It is only me and him, only two in the east of that parliament, who have chaired both the legal committee and the committee on rules of procedure. We only two. And he was my chairman. When I chaired the legal committee, he was still practicing law as a state attorney. He wasn't in parliament. So I have high respect for him as a lawyer and as a friend. And when he came, he became the chairperson of the legal committee, and I was his member, very obedient member. So me and the right honorable both, we've come from far. He only missed my physical. Congratulate him on assuming that office. We've talked on the phone, but I wanted to congratulate him physically, but he's away. So, one, your roles, legislations and oversight. Two, the executive, implementation. You implement the laws that have been passed by Parliament, and then public administration management, the entire arm of government or of state called the executive. The judiciary's role is just to interpret laws and resolving constitutional disputes. That is their only role. So when sometimes in their decisions, they make orders which turn out to be read like laws, that will be interfering in the space of the legislature. So, note the overlap. Parliament makes laws, but the executive implements them, and the judiciary interprets them. This is not confusion. It is design. It is designed by the Constitution that each arm of government will be doing a particular role. There is even something which sometimes confuses even senior lawyers like myself. There is a law we made, and I think that time the Honorable Clerk was my chairman. The Honorable Clerk has also been my chairman, by the way, he was chairman of the legal committee. I think in 2001, where they had I'm the one who nominated him to be the chairman of the legal committee then. There's a law we made. It went through our committee. Then there was a dispute in courts. Then the judges in their judgment, they say, no, the intention of the legislature should not have been this. If they did, but what they were disputing actually was the intention of the legislature. Can you imagine? But the powers is to them. So much I knew the intention because we made the law. I don't have the power to tell them, but what you are saying is wrong. You have to urge it before them, and they take their decision. So that is the nature of our separation of powers. Even when you are part of the legal process, that makes the law. When it comes to interpret, it goes to another arm of government. And once they make a decision, it is final. However erroneous it is, you can maybe appeal to a higher court. But even when that court, the higher one, makes an error, you have no remedy. Because that's their specialty and that's their mandate according to the Constitution. The partial separation model, where functional overlap ensures effective governance. And I think you heard the Westminster resource person who was here and making comments. Separation is not a wall, but a system of checks and balances. Honorable members, there are many people who have this misconception, imagining like these are parallel rail lines. No, you must find a way of working together. You must find a way of working together, because the people of Uganda envisage that you'll work together. So don't just do things in a parallel way. It must be a well-coordinated separation, but not a system that each does his own thing on his own. Examples of institutional interdependence in Uganda. Ministers in Parliament, under Article 78. Ministers, not all of course, there are ministers who are elected members of Parliament, like the Honorable two members here, the Right Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, and then the Honorable Chief Whip. They are members of Parliament and yet they are ministers. But then there is another category who are ministers, but they are not elected members of Parliament. I saw Jane Ombadi, I think he was here. Jane Ombadi there. Jane Ombadi is a minister, but not an elected member of Parliament. Those are what we call them ex-official members. Of course, once they come to Parliament, they are like any other MP, only they don't have a voting right. So you have the executive being part of Parliament. So that is the sort of model which is partial separation. That today, the executive is part and parcel of Parliament. The ministers who are elected have all the rights, including voting rights. Like the Honorable Ruth Acheng Ochero and the Honorable the Right Honorable Rukia Nakadam. They are ministers, but they're also MPs. So they have all the rights like you who vote in Parliament, who also elected. But then the Honorable Jane Ombadi does not have the right to vote in Parliament. When it is voting, he keeps out of it. And that's not because he's an officer. It is because he's not an elected MP with a constituency. You have executive legislation. The executive legislation inserts significant proportion of all bills passed by Parliament. According to our Constitution, priority of parliamentary business is given to government. And 95% of the bills you are going to consider are all executive bills. Maybe 5% or even less could be private members' bills. But 90% of all the bills will be executive initiated. So you have a law initiated by government, the executive, and you'll find it is even the ministers, relevant ministers who sign them. And once it comes to Parliament, you go through it through your relevant committees and enact a law, but it was initiated by government. Government participates again during the legislative process until it is passed. There is another legislation by executive. For those of you who are lawyers, you are going to understand one thing, that there is a provision which always gives the relevant minister powers to make rules and regulations for the implementation of a particular law. One, it is absolutely okay for ministers to make the rules and regulation. to implement a particular law. What you should only guard is that the minister does not exceed his or her powers, such that also he turns out into a legislator taking advantage of that provision. So what we were trying to do is to make sure, and I think we put it in the rules, we went through amendment of our rules of procedure and we put it there, such that the ministers, when they make the rules and regulation, they should lay them on the table in Parliament, such that you have an opportunity to look through them, to see, did this particular minister exceed powers? Because he might use that particular provision and he also legislates. So you need to be very careful. You give him powers to make rules and regulations to make sure that the substantive act is implemented. But those powers are not for him to legislate, because then he'll be usurping your powers as honorable members of Parliament. And Article 113, that is parliamentary approval. Parliament approves presidential key appointments. But that's also constitutional. So, whereas the Constitution gives powers of the president to appoint, it also gives Parliament some powers under 113 to confirm, approve those appointments. That's why, much as the appointment authority for ministers is the president, it again rests with you. It goes back to you to approve those nominations. And once you say no, there is no appointment. So you are now also part and parcel of the appointment process. But not all offices of government, are approved by Parliament. It is only those which are provided for under the Constitution. For example, one of the most important offices, honorable members, is that of ambassadors. But ambassadors are never approved by you because the Constitution does not provide so. However, when you go to constitutional commissions, they come to you for approval. So, appointment of particular offices in the executive is by the president, but you also given a role in the appointment. Judges of the courts of judicature are appointed by the president on recommendation of the Judicial Service Commission, but they also must come to you for approval. And once you don't approve, there is no judge appointed. But you are not the appointing authority. The appointing authority is the what? The president. So, what the Constitution of Uganda has done is to give you a little bit of shared responsibilities. And there is no magic in finding the reason why. You are one football team, for those of you who love football. And you must score in one goal. And that goal is for the good of the people of Uganda. All of you are supposed to be working together to make sure that you score in that goal, and as citizens are happy because you are delivering as a better country. Unnecessary competition, unnecessary conflict is a disservice to the people. Unnecessary competition, unnecessary, rivalries is a disservice. You are supposed to work together to make sure that you deliver on your constitutional mandate for the good of the people. So, yes, there should be competition amongst politicians and rival political parties, but it should be in the context. The context should be maybe policy alternatives, but not the good of us as citizens. We want the Parliament and the executive to work together to deliver for us as citizens. And that's what the Constitution envisages. Working together with the executive. Effective governance requires Parliament and executive to cooperate. Without cooperation, the state cannot function. collaboration for national development and stability. So, listening to both the leader of government business and the leader of opposition, I thought they were talking about this. They all want to work together, and they are pledged to work together. Reason, because of this. And that's why I want them both to, their officers, to walk on the talk. Your rivals, one is a leader of opposition in parliament, one is leader of government business, but the responsibility is to have this institution of state parliament to deliver on its mandate. So you have to work together, you have got to cooperate. I'm going to give you a vivid example. And I'm sure that's why I was invited. I shadowed the 3 attorney generals. I don't know, I think 3.5 attorney generals. I shadowed, let his soul rest in peace, Professor Dr. Kidu Makubuya. He was the attorney general when I was shadow attorney general. The late Nyombi, he was a shadow attorney general when I was shadow. I refused to be called the shadow at that time. I used to call myself the other attorney general. And I shadowed, I've seen the Honorable Frederick Hind, Member of Parliament in Akau. There he is. These are realities. I shadowed him. So we had the most contentious bill, one of those most contentious in the history of Parliament, Public Order Management Bill. It was hot in papers. It was hot in Parliament. The Right Honorable Rugunda was the Prime Minister. They said, how do we diffuse this tension? So the Right Honorable Wafula Gut was the leader of opposition. So they met, the Honorable Rugunda and the Right Honorable Gut. They met to see if they can strike some balance. I'm waiting for that opportunity. One is here, one is not here. When the Right Honorable Nabanja and the Right Honorable Senyonyi sit both of them to say, now what do we do? 2 of them. One leader this, one leader, because there is a crisis. Then they also agreed that it's not about us too. Let me call my shadow cabinet and you also call the relevant ministers, the other side. So, Right Honorable Rugunda called the then Minister for Security was, I think she's passed on, Mary Kororo. Is that the name Kororo? Karoro? Or Krut? General Katumba Wamala was, I think it must have been either Army Commander. Honorable Fidu will remind us. So they called the Army Commander, they called the Inspector General of Police, Minister of State for Security, and all the security apparatus, they were there. The Honorable Gut also called his team, and that included myself. Is Honorable Fungaro here? Caps? I don't think he's in the audience, but at that time he was a secretary, was a shadow minister for, I think, defense. We also a team, this side and this side. So we went, and you can't imagine in the boardroom of the Prime Minister. We sat, we discussed, agreed, disagreed. Then they said, if the issue is the law, Attorney General, go and sit with this shadow Attorney General. Go and resolve this for us. So me and the Honorable Frederick were given the assignment to go and interpret each and every clause for them. So the Honorable Frederick calls a meeting in his chambers. We go there and He said, no, my brother, you know, we agree on this, some we don't agree. Why don't we ask some officers of the ministry to come and help us? I said, fine. So he brought in around 3 commissioners, and he explained to them what was the problem. He said, you guys, do this for us, bring us and advise us. We gave them, I think, 2-3 days. They came with a memorandum. So they gave it to us, and we went through them. At the end of the day, we had a meeting of the mind of the Public Order Management Act bill at that time. All the worries were not in the law. I repeat, all the worries of the Public Order Management Bill, which eventually came Act, were not in the law. Everything was being talked about was the misinterpretation of the law. A situation which some continues up today. Because me, as the Attorney General and the Shadow Attorney General, we signed a joint advice. Unprecedented, it has never happened. And I don't know whether we've had any other since that time. Where you've got the Attorney General and the Shadow Attorney General signing a joint interpretation of the law. I may be taking too long. I don't know whether I need to summarize. Avenues of formal interaction. No, that's not the slide, please. Yes. State of the Nation address. That's when the executive interacts with the parliament directly. There is question time. I heard the Prime Minister talking about it. That is also you interacting with the Prime Minister, but not as leader of government, but as Prime Minister. You ask any question, and she's supposed to be, by Constitution, she must answer them. Don't allow Prime Minister to get away from your questions. And the questions don't relate. Please, it's not about your parties. That the Prime Minister must be asked questions by members of the opposition. It is all members of Parliament, because the issues which you raise, some of them affect your own constituencies. Some of them affect the country. So when it's Prime Minister's time, please, it is the entire Parliament to ask relevant questions. It's not about the Honorable Senyonyi's group, but all members of Parliament should be able to ask the government to explain. At the end of the day, you have a title, and the title is your backup benchers. Do you sit in a cabinet? So where do you get the time to ask the Prime Minister? Formally. Issues affecting your constituencies. You will only do it on the floor. And sometimes you may have a relationship where you walk to the Prime Minister's office and ask. But not all of you will be walking there and asking. Sometimes what you are asking is of a general application. It applies to the entire country. So the Prime Minister gets an opportunity to answer, or you bring it to the concern of government, so that government follows it up. Committees. Committees have direct interaction with the ministers, departments, agencies of government, and then you can raise all the issues. Legislative partnership, next slide. Parliament is not a rubber stamp. While most bills originate from the executive reflecting policy priorities, Parliament is not a mere approving authority. You will be doing the people of Uganda a disservice. We can even look at the check which you people pick as Parliament. If your duty is to rubber stamp, that would be shortchanging us. You are supposed to do scrutiny. Because you remember when you were campaigning, what did you tell the people of Uganda? You'll be talking, you're in Parliament speaking on their behalf from all your villages. And on that basis, they elected you. How can they elect you and you go ahead and you become a rubber stamp? You'll be absconding from your responsibilities. But when I say you are not a rubber stamp, I'm not saying it is you to become it's not rivalry between you and the executive. The executive brings its bills, its budget, then you go through it. Where you disagree, you say, by the way, this we can do it better. And the executive is supposed to listen. Sometimes you have disagreements, because disagreement is normal. But you are supposed to be complementing each other. Parliament cannot afford to say that ours is about approving the executive. But that does not say that you are going to obstruct what the executive is doing. Because the executive also doing everything in the name of the people of Uganda and in good faith. I'm going to talk about something so it goes to scrutinizing, aligning, and improving the overall quality of the bills or the entire government business. Yours is actually to improve the quality of business that the executive brings to you. Maybe let me put it here. Next slide, I'll slip it just. We are under multi-party dispensation. The majority of members of parliament belong to the National Resistance Movement. To the Chief Whip, to avoid a situation where you are facing off with your members of parliament, and you call a caucus, the caucus must be transparent and exhaustive of the issue. You try to resolve some of those differences in the caucus, so that by the time you come to parliament, you have a meeting of mind. But should you come to parliament when you've not had a detailed transaction with your members, chances that you'll have problem with them on the floor are high. And then sometimes it looks ugly when you have your own members fighting you of your own party. So, to the leader of opposition, the same counsel I gave. If you have a business, try within your flock. Develop consensus, and that's to your advantage. In your caucus, demand transparency and detailed discussion of the issues, so that you sort of harmonize. Then there are those where you don't have harmony. You can carry them to the floor for the people of Uganda to say there is a difference of opinion. So leadership of both the NRM and leadership of the opposition should develop consensus within their groups by having a very transparent discussion. And I'll give you an example. The last business we had in Parliament, I was a member of that joint committee, Internal Affairs and Legal and Parliamentary Joint Committee, which scrutinized the sovereignty bill. You embarrassed us, the executive. You did embarrass us. You brought a bill when you had no consensus. Institutions of government came, started bashing you on your own bill. And it was like, what government is this one? But those are experiences you face, so that tomorrow you don't repeat the same mistakes. So try to have serious business discussed within your caucuses and develop consensus. When you come to the floor, it doesn't look ugly, because there are those people who don't wish Parliament well, who will jump on it. Oh, you see what's happening in Parliament? And with these days of social media, oh, they don't have a field day. So you need to resolve, discuss in good faith. Don't force positions to your members. Convince them such that you carry them along. Sometimes they have another thing they do, Honorable Rusacher. They run away. They stay away from, they stay in the corridors, they stay home. So, I don't believe in this one. Let them do it themselves. So you are left with the chief whip and a few enthusiastic members, when the rest of your team has stayed away. So is the leader of opposition. They leave you and a few shadow ministers, the rest are away. Why? You've not developed consensus, so you need to do that. Who controls the budget? The budget is a function of the executive, and indeed the president is the national, is the minister of finance. The real minister of finance is the president, though he delegates to my brother now, Henry, the Honorable Musasi's. So, but much as this budget is for the president and executive, it is you who appropriates. And your biggest obligation, national obligation, is appropriation of the budget, because that is the national cake. Everybody is talking about national cake. National cake is the budget. What resources go to what area and for what? So that power of the purse, which is under Article 155, is a joint one between the executive and parliament. So they come to different sectoral committees with figures, and you are supposed to make an input. A parliamentary committee that does not make an input in a budget is a useless committee. How? Because you are talking about your people, what resources are going to your people. So that is a shared responsibility between the executive and parliament. And when parliament brings what we call the sectoral allocations with either the budget framework, it goes to your different committees. You make a report. Those reports now go to the budget committee for harmonization. That they have already picked your ideas. And those ideas are now harmonized within the budget committee. So this is also a shared responsibility for which, as I said, working differently, separately, but together as arms of government. I think leave slide 4, go to oversight. Oversight is the other very, very important function, constitutional duty of parliament. I'm going to talk about what I think I have been parted to. One time I was chairperson of COSASE. Actually, I've chaired more committees of parliament than any other person in the history of this parliament. From Legiko, no person has ever chaired more committees than me. Standing, accountability, ad hoc, I've chaired all of them. One time I was chairperson of COSASE. Those of you who are very active in public affairs, you must have followed. Investigating Bank of Uganda was not easy, because at that time it had a very robust governor. It's not a person you would call and he would even come. But because he knew the sort of committee he was dealing with, he used to come for 1.5 months. The late Mutebire would come every day from 9 to 5. All these TV stations in the country switched off and they only following live for 1.5 months. But to take that decision, some members of cabinet were not happy. They actually went to the president and complained that we are undressing Bank of Uganda. It's going to cause a big problem with the economy. I like to thank the president at that time, because he called me and said, "What is this you people are doing?" So I explained that this is what we are doing and so on. He said, "But can't you maybe do it in-house?" I said, "It's not possible, because the banks closed were people's banks, and these people are not accounting." I remember telling the president that if Bank of Uganda was a commercial bank, then Bank of Uganda would have closed it. Because what Bank of Uganda at that time was doing was so unethical. You close banks, you don't account to anybody. So Parliament is going to have those responsibilities where you must do your job as oversight. Sometimes you're going to get a little bit of resistance from this other side. But if you are doing it in good faith, and I want to emphasize, in good faith, there would be no problem. You can stand strong. You can explain to anybody that we are doing this in good faith. That is why, even after we had issued our report, there was an uproar and people cooperated, and others even went to court. And the court dismissed all the cases because we did everything professionally. Other people wanted to do things, to take advantage, and you do things as against the law, as against the rules. And we say, no, we have to do things professionally. So that is what you have to do. Do professionally, do things in good faith. I am telling you, can explain to anybody, including the president, you will have no problem. Unless he has changed his mind these days, then he would have no problem. Reinforcing, I think this is the last one, Mr. Chairman. Reinforcing independence and jurisdiction. You see, if you are talking about powers, there is that, are you going beyond your powers? Is this institution interfering with this one's powers? So that has been litigated upon by many, many cases, including constitutional court decisions. And I give so many decisions, which I said I don't want to bore you with that. Attorney General versus Michael Kabaziguruka, you remember that UPDF Act case? Semogerere versus the Attorney General, legislative authority to the executive, protecting parliamentary sovereignty, and many, many other cases. You even had strains, a conflict. I don't know whether I was honored, but I was party to some of these conflicts. For example, in 2005, removal of presidential term limits. It was not very easy business. I don't know how many in this audience who are part of that process. Honorable Adolf was, actually, the Honorable Adolf was the Deputy Attorney General. There are not many, but those are difficult days. You are going to have quite a number. Just have very strong shock absorbers. Because you are going to have there is no way to have 5 years without some of those things. They will be there. Removal of presidential limits. I was there. Marema Birizi. Sometimes our friends in the uniform paid us visits, but not on invitation. And all those ended up in courts. And the courts tried to define what is allowable and what is not allowable under a free and democratic society. So you are going to have those sort of strains, but you have to continue doing what you are supposed to be doing. Recently, there was the UPDF Act. It is in court. I was party to it, but I will not go ahead to, because it is sub judice. I saw the Attorney General here. I don't know. Yes. I've been telling people I'm senior, now I'm in trouble. My senior is there. Real senior, not because he's Attorney General, but real senior. Some of those things you see, the mistakes I'll be making in this presentation, blame the Honorable Mayanja. He's the one who, part of those who produced this product. So if I've made any mistake, he's responsible. Challenges, as I conclude. What makes maintaining the balance difficult? Sometimes the executive wants to have over control over public resources, Party influence can limit independent parliamentary actions. I've talked about that. Sometimes it's all about caucuses, and then because of party, and so on, you don't, it might end up being a challenge. What I would advise, even if your party has a position, look at the national interest. Why? Because the Constitution says national interest first, before you look at your parties. But I've seen other people who look at party interest, then the national interest come later. Not every other time your party's interest is national interest. And it doesn't matter which party, whether they're ruling or even with the opposition. Sometimes there is a conflict. So you as members of parliament, I advise for you to look at the national interest, then you can go to the party interest. Or try to harmonize in your caucuses, because that's where you can do that harmony. Quite easily, freely, and in good faith. On the floor, you'll be looking at competition. And, you know, sometimes cheap goals. Who scores a cheap goal? I'll give you an example. Again, I supported the Honorable Hind on the floor on some other matter when he was Attorney General, and I was shadowed. And then my leader of opposition came, he said, since when did you become government Attorney General? I said, why? He said, if they're making their mistake, it is theirs. Are you the one, are you paid? I said, what is this going on? So, you need to act in good faith. Most important, national interest. Then from there you can look at your party interest, whether ruling party or opposition party. It is secondary to national interest. Sometimes there's a problem of patronage, capacity, constraints. Clerk, you'll have to, I wish the speaker was here. Some of this monies you are saving, I would really counsel that you forward it to that department which builds capacity of MPs. MPs should continue learning. You need to build them capacities. That's why I don't have any problem with foreign travel. Foreign travel, it helps people to see the world. And they don't come different. You know, you are from Mulanda, a village there, somewhere in Tororo. You don't know anything then, but when you start traveling, you even knowing how to dress, you see how people, they dress differently and so on. So, even travel is okay. Build the capacity for members of parliament such that they know what goes in other parliaments, such that they know how members of parliament discuss issues, what makes a member of parliament tick. You may not learn that when you are in Idudi all the time. Idudi is where the Honorable Opondo comes from. So there should be next choose. These are realities which you will have to navigate. So lastly, in conclusion, in Uganda, separation of powers means balanced interaction, not rigid division. Parliament works with the executive, but retains independence to hold it accountable. The judiciary interprets the Constitution and resolves disputes. As Justice Odochi's 3 cooking stones teach, Parliament must stay firm and balanced. Weakness invites executive overreach. I repeat, your weakness invites an overreach by this side. The choice is yours. But excessive confrontation, I repeat, excessive confrontation, paralyzes governance. So you don't need that excessive confrontation if you are disagreeing. Find a way of minimizing your differences and harmonizing. Other than confrontation, don't work for the gallery. Success depends on collaborating without capitulating and overseeing without obstructing. Essential for democracy, constitutionalism, and national development. Thank you very much, and please have a good 12th Parliament.
Please join me again in thanking Honorable Abdu